The way I got into cane and making syrup was I lived in a county a little ways away from here, and I was in my early 20s, and I noticed an elderly gentleman. He was putting up some 4x4s in his yard, and I noticed he had some peeled pine trees. He was notching them to fit on top of them. And on a weekend, I kind of watched him from a distance, just curious, because I love that type of woodwork anyway, being in the construction business. And I noticed he was putting a roof over it, and then I noticed the next weekend they were laying bricks all up under it and everything. I'm like, what is he doing? You know, being a nosy neighbor, I went over, and very kind man. The man was as good as gold, probably one of the best neighbors a person ever want to have. Well, he told me, he says, man, we're setting up a cane furnace here in my yard. He said, when I was a kid, we made sugarcane all the time. He said, we're fixing to get back into it as old men. And I said, well, man, I'd like to learn that. I said, if you don't mind, I'd like to come over. And he said, come on over, you know. So I went over, and they would let me do little things here and there. They mainly let me start learning how to skim. And if I happened to skim at the wrong time, they'd tell me, put that thing down, boy, don't you be skimming that syrup. And a lot of people would take that offensive, but that was the old way. They just looked at you and told you to put it down. And I said, yes, sir. And I'd put it down, and he'd look at me and he'd say, all right, it needs skimming now, get after it. And I'd get up there, and if I did it wrong, he'd say, oh, you're going too fast with it, slow down. Pick it up, hold it there just a second, move it off real slow over to the side. And rather than getting upset with being told sternly how to do something, because you can ruin the syrup by doing it wrong. You can get the dregs, can get down into that syrup when it gets to a certain point, and you can't get it out. Even if you try to filter it, it'll still be little tiny flecks in there that you almost impossible to filter out. And by just being observant, paying attention for years and years, and then actually doing my best to getting into learning how to make it and finding my own cane mill, having my own pan made and all this kind of stuff, I finally come to the realization, this is something I want to do on my own. And from that point forward, in some of my other properties, we had furnaces set up where we were cooking hundreds of gallons of syrup a day. And of course now I don't have to cook hundreds of gallons. I'm just enjoying cooking a few gallons at a time and showing people on YouTube that, hey, the regular homesteader can do this on a small scale basis. You don't have to have the big old cast iron kettles and all the brick furnaces and the big evaporator pans and all that kind of stuff. You can take a 55-gallon drum with a stove kit and a couple of $100, and you can make your own. Bring the pot
and you
out.
got it, the slats on the bottom of it fits the pan exactly.
Yeah, so it don't slide out of the pot.
Because we were having time with this, and it trying to pull loose, just clipped here.
Yeah.
Got a lot of junk in it.
That's the stuff we don't want in it. This is the way you can do it.
Poor man's way.
Homesteader can do it and not have those big pans and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't have those gigantic cast irons that cost $1 million.
Yeah. Use the lid off.
Just gonna pour it in.
Pour it in. You are what you believe you are. You have to speak it.
Speaking into existence.
That's right. Now that one looks a touch darker.
Yeah, it does.
That must have been the first one we cut.
It sat for a few minutes, probably.
That's the second one we ground. That's what it was. The first one had sat for a little while, and the stuff probably all settled to the bottom. Good old fat pine ladder. Can't beat it. He's getting the draft.
I'm making another pot of coffee.
You wouldn't know the wind would start blowing.
Yep.
Is it coming out the top of the pipe yet? This is probably the most economical way for the modern homesteader to cook their own syrup. Whether it's sugar cane, whether it's sorghum, or whether it's maple syrup. I mean, depending on, it doesn't matter where you live at in the country. Once you get it to the juice stage, like this, it's basically all the same. The cooking methods is basically all the same. It's just knowing when it's syrup, you know, when you've got it to that point. And this cooker, it cost me like $20 for the drum, for all the cast iron stove kit to go on it, the legs and the door and stuff. And then another, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 for that. So, you know, probably 150 bucks. And then I bought the stainless pans off of Amazon. Now these are the deep ones. And I bought them the exact width of my barrel right here, because once we figured what width we wanted it, I ordered the pans to fit. They make a shallow pan and they make a deep pan. You want to make sure you get the deep one. Brought the pans in. I set them against the barrel, marked the angle of the sides of the pans on the barrel. Actually took a hand grinder, cut the barrel out, went back and bent the flanges over on the inside of it in here, and then pop riveted some angle iron so these pans can slide on the angle iron. Plus, it gives you a place to set a level on it. So when you're setting this thing up, you can get it level one way, and then you can get it level the other way. Then you can set it up in your juice. You don't have to worry about it running out the corner of your pan somewhere because it's unlevel. Works out really, really good for the homesteader. So, you know, a couple $100, you're ready to go.
Thought I'd get this done.
Yeah, that fire's starting to kick off good there. And I rode there on a four-wheeler in the dark.
You can feel the heat radiating off of this part right here. And right here it's still cool. But if I go right here, my hands are hot. So there's got to be a lot of heat directed up to the bottom of those pans. Looks to me like this one is going hotter than this one right now.
Yeah.
Probably because the heat's drawing through from the front and over. My hands are less numb.
I don't know where it's going to be shooting out. I don't have a clue. I'm going to bring some more shears. You gotta go hunt some more. 5 more. But I really need to get him some juice to add to that, but I think it'll be okay. All right, let's go maybe 5 or 6 more stalks and then holler at me.
Okay.
So you're saying your pan on the front is cooler so you can keep adding syrup to it.
Yes. And then what we'll do now is we'll take the one up here, which is, this is cold juice, and I'll take the cold juice and I'll come down here and I'll set the pan down in this and I just release it into it. The pan in the front is basically just good and warm. The one in the back is boiling. What happens is if you take cold juice and pour it into the hot pan, you get crystallization. So by taking, like say I take a scoop of this juice right here, which is already kind of semi-hot, and I move it back here and I pour it into this one, I'm not getting the crystallization that I would normally get if I just dump cold juice into it.
You could smell the pineapple for 2 to 3 feet away. It's not like a store pineapple because it actually got ripe on the... What do we have here?
A satsuma cake.
That is fantastic.
All right, here you go.
It's sustainable, free trade, locally produced, gluten-free.
It is gluten
It's
free.
gluten-free.
There we go.
I'm gonna bring yours
Got
in
everything.
just a second.
And non-estrogenic.
Yeah. Made from homegrown
Oh, that's
satsumas.
fantastic.
That's the whole satsuma. You put the
You got the zest in there. Because I
Oh,
can
you-
taste
you
that
put-
bitter, that oil. Oh man,
Yeah.
it's so good.
okay, so you can see. Pull this off, and when you come at it, one more. Okay, you see where it starts changing? Anywhere in here or right here in that area. We came in and he dug a hole about yay deep in a round circle, and it was all the way out. Then we went back and we cut pieces about maybe 12 to 18 inches, and we placed them in a round circle, and then we placed them like spokes in a wagon wheel. And so that's what's created all this. We had, I think, 10 of them here, and it produced more cane than 2 long rows that we had in the garden. So it's been, and it looks better. I mean, you have to admit, it looks nice. And it's grown well and it's healthy. And I'm gonna miss the wind blowing these things. This is the way we'll grow because it doesn't take no space. For an average family, you could do 1 wagon wheel, and we got anywhere from 25 to 30 stalks out of 1 wagon wheel. And so for the average family, that's all they'd ever want. It takes 100 for us to cook like we did today, 100 stalks, and that was almost 3 wagon wheels. And then he's been selling, like if you look here, he sold all of this and all of that. And then we have this one to go, so that one will get cut down today. And we'll be through with the sugar cane, and we're just piling the tops back on. And you see where they're coming out like this? I've been cutting those because, as you know, sugar cane comes back out when it warms up. And we have freezing temperatures coming. And we want it not growing during the freeze. And then we just pile all this on top of it and stomp it down. And when it gets spring, we'll come pull all this out and let it grow again and take the weeds out. Very easy.
So how much sugar cane did you plant in to start one of those wagon wheels? How much planting material?
If you had maybe 3 of those stalks, you can plant a wagon wheel. And so out of 3 stalks, you get 30 new ones. That's pretty good return, right? And these boys are doing a good job because I did most of this myself yesterday. I actually like having child labor. I'm not gonna lie.
That pan has been completely emptied and refilled with just plain water. And what we use that for, I'll give you a little bit of a show here how we use that. Like if we come here to do some skimming, like I usually let it get a little thicker than this, but this is for demonstration purposes. We go real slow. And we take off that little bit of skimming right there. And then when I throw it in the bucket, now what we can do is, because this water is hot and it's just plain water, is I can shoot that in there and it completely cleans it back off. It takes all the residue off of this here, so that I can come back again and I can get the rest of the skimmings off. Throw it in the bucket. And you see you still have some skimmings on there. You don't want to put that back in the pan, so you'll come here to the clean water and you shoot it in there like that and it's gone. And I usually just leave it sitting in this, because by leaving it sitting in it, it keeps it hot and I'm not putting a piece of cold metal back into the finished product here that we're working on getting finished.
Could you explain that skimmer to me? How you made that thing? That is beautiful.
Yeah, I took some just plain galvanized sheet metal, and I bent it up on the edges over here, and I took a 16-penny nail, and I kind of like drew me some grid work in here, and I took a hammer. You don't want to drive it through it, you just want to drive it to the point where the tip of the nail just barely comes through and kind of dimples it out a little bit, so that when we run it through here and pick it up, the liquid can run through it, but the skimmings will actually stay on top. And then I just took some other pieces of sheet metal and bent them, and took some 1/4-inch screws and just screwed it together here. Made me a back on it, and then I just made a handle piece to fit the handle here. I mean, it's kind of something I just came up with here. And this is actually made to fit a baffle pan, or a evaporator pan that's got the baffles in it. This fits directly just tight between each one of the baffles in a evaporator pan. When you're skimming it out, that's where the width comes from on it. So that's basically, all there is to it. There's only 2 of us here. As I began to think about it, I said I really only need like maybe 2 gallons of syrup a year for me to be able to make it with just me and Wanda. And I've kind of created this system that we got right here, and I can cook 2 gallons real easy with this. I mean, and it's not a lot of work. Most of the work takes place out in the field out there. When you come up here and get to this point, it's more or less just experience, knowledge, stuff like that. It's not really anything physical about it. Now, of course, when we get a little bit later on, everything's going to take a completely different look later on. The syrup's going to take on a different look. A whole different process is going to take place. And it's at that point that all the work we've done could be null and void if you make one mistake. So at that point is when you got to really know what you're doing. Up to this point, anybody can do this. But when you get down to the end, that's where the tricks of the trade come in. There's a lot of wind. It's making it very difficult to cook it today, I can tell you that. Because right when it gets up against the boil, now the part that's going to be detrimental is when it gets down to the final syrup making part, and then going to 3/4-inch bubbles, and then all of a sudden the wind blows and it all goes away. And you're sitting there going like, oh no, what stage are we in now? That's where picking it up, sheeting it, and looking at the pan when we pick it up, that's where you got to have that knowledge. still dripping pretty thin, so I'm not quite close enough yet. The bubbles will start running on the top of it now. Instead of just bubbling up and down, you'll actually get up on top of it and run around on top of it and start dancing. And then you'll notice they'll gradually, as they're separated, they'll all start coming together and they'll start touching one another, and they'll be like maybe 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and then they'll just start forming over the top of the whole thing. And literally, it'll take on a completely different color, a completely different look, and everything. That's what I keep watching. I don't want to get where it'll boil over, because it will boil over when it gets to a point it'll foam. The hardest part is cutting out for the pans at the top to fit the pans perfectly. Getting the angles right. Looks like we're locked at 215. It ain't moving. Yep, we're stuck at 215. So, 215, we got 7 more degrees to go to get there. You notice how the foam's even different. They're all running together. Now at this point, I could literally sit here and keep doing this over and over and over. But I'm actually doing nothing but taking syrup out of it. So it's not really that important to do it. What we're going to start watching from this point forward is the bubbles in it. I'm not going to worry so much about skimming unless it just gets really, really bad. But you'll see the 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch bubbles will actually start running together, and they'll start touching each other, and then at some point you'll begin to see large bubbles get to be about 1 inch in diameter, and then it'll take on a foamed over look. And at that point is what we got to worry about boiling over or scorching. We may have to knock the fire back, we may have to add to it depending on what stage we're at. And that's where the wind is your enemy, because it'll be up and foaming up, doing really, really good, and if a hard wind comes through, it'll lay it down flat, and it's like it's got to start all over again. So this is why you don't want the wind really blowing when this is going on at this stage of it. And I will be checking it though to see if it's okay. See it? How it's starting to drip? It's not quite there yet. It's making syrup right now, and a lot of people would call that pancake syrup because it's really, really thin. Okay, we're getting close. Just thinking about how the bubbles are all coming together. More like it looks more like foam. What I'm waiting to see them do is to grow like 1 inch in diameter. See how that wads up on the end? Looks like that. Oh, I'm moving up. 220.
All right, so we have this, I think it's a milk pan, right?
Yeah, it's a milk pail. I used to milk in it.
And we just cleaned it yesterday, got it all clean.
There's no seam in the bottom of it.
This is actually, this linen. I mean, it's like cheesecloth, but it's like a diaper basically in some ways, the old-fashioned diapers. And we just put clothespins around it and give it a little bit of, so that it catches. And we just go around. I don't know how many of these I brought out, but just enough that it doesn't fall off when you pour hot liquid in there. Okay, the handle's right there, so that's what. And we get a little bit of a pooch where it'll just drain, and that'll be one of our filtering processes. You got some big bubbles on the sides. Okay, let me go put stuff in the oven.
This is the part right here where you can get in trouble. You have to kind of really be on it. Because see how it's foaming up on us? You see how I told you the bubbles will start getting larger as they pop up here? We're looking for I like to have about 1 inch in diameter. Let's do a little quick test. Let's see here. I like to get about 1 inch wide. Okay, she's starting to raise up on me here now. I can't wait on her. Whew. We got a lot of syrup.
It may even be more than that, reckon. Oh, that's awesome. Look at that. Good job, boys.
I don't know if that pail's gonna hold.
I don't think it is. I think you're gonna have to stop. Yeah, that's all we're gonna get.
Careful.
All right, so I've got to find another pail, right?
Hang on.
I think that's it. It's beautiful. The Deep South cane syrup finale.
I don't actually know how deep it is in the pail, but I'm pretty sure it's probably that deep.
I think so too. I don't know that you can tell without taking it off.
I'm gonna have to take it off. It's looking good.
It's looking a lot like Christmas. Thanksgiving something, huh?
Let me just look under the edge of it here.
Can you?
It's not full.
How far is it? Can we pull this up, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Just leave it there. It's gonna hold it. See if it'll go down.
It'll hold it.
All right.
Finally.
All right. I need one of y'all to turn the water on for me. You'll have to turn it back off now. Hang on just a minute.
I don't need to put it in jars.
The reason I'm filling both of these up is because I'm gonna let it set overnight with all those coals in it,
Over there?
and it will actually steam and evaporate the water out of these if I don't go ahead and fill them almost all the way to the top.
You got it? We're going in and getting everything ready in there. We have the jars in the oven at 220 so that they're not cold when you put this hot syrup in there. And I guess I should have slid it a little closer. And then we've got a flat and a lid. And because this is cane syrup, we're not pressure canning or anything like that, I'm using anchor hocking jars and they're anchor hocking lids. So it's not really going to matter. Okay, I think I'm hot chocolate and coffeeed out.
Yeah.
Had enough for one day. Good to the last drop, right?
Finger looking good.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. That's what we gotta do. Well, that's finger looking
That's the
good.
best syrup I had all day.
Okay, this is what you do. You come through and you just. Ow, shit, that's hot.
Cut that part out.
Okay.
All right, edit this.